The morning my grandmother was buried, I woke up at 4 a.m. and ironed my dress whites for the third time, not because they needed it, because my hands needed something to do. I'd flown in from Norfolk the night before, 6 years in the Navy, 2 deployments, and I still couldn't get the smell of jet fuel out of my flight suits no matter how many times they went through laundry. But the dress whites were different. They were the uniform I'd worn at my commissioning, the one Grandma had pinned my ensign bars on with hands that were already starting to shake from the Parkinson's. She told me that day, "Eleanor, don't let any of them make you feel small. You're the only one in this family who ever did anything that mattered." I didn't know then that any of them included her own son. My father. My name is Eleanor Brannigan. I'm 31 years old. I'm a lieutenant in the United States Navy attached to Naval Criminal Investigative Service after a transfer 2 years ago. And the day we put my grandmother in the ground in a small Catholic cemetery in Worcester, Massachusetts, my older brother Travis stood in front of 47 people and called me a useless soldier. He got the branch wrong. He always did. Let me back up. Grandma raised me, not officially, not legally, but in every way that counted. My mother walked out when I was 4 and Travis was 7, and my father did what he always did. He found a way to make her leaving about himself. He drank for a year. Then he found Jesus. Then he found a second wife, named Brenda, who had 2 boys of her own, and somewhere in all that finding, he stopped having room for the kids he already had. So Grandma took us on the weekends, then most weeknights. Then by the time I was 8, full-time, Travis bounced between her house and Dad's, mostly because Brenda's boys were closer to his age and they had a pool. I stayed with Grandma. She taught me to make a proper roux. She made me memorize the multiplication tables out loud while she folded laundry. She drove me to swim meets in a 1998 Buick LeSabre that smelled like peppermint and old leather. When I told her I wanted to apply to the Naval Academy, she didn't blink. She drove me to the recruiter herself. When I got in, she cried so hard she had to pull over on Route 9. My father didn't come to my graduation from Annapolis. He was at a fishing tournament in Lake Erie that weekend. He sent a card. Travis didn't come either. He was busy growing his business, which I'd later learn was a polite way of saying he was hustling pyramid schemes through Facebook. Grandma flew down by herself, 81 years old, never been on a plane east of Buffalo. She sat in the front row in a navy blue dress and a hat with a tiny silk rose, and when they called my name she stood up, and I swear to you that woman cheered like she was at a Patriots game. That was the kind of person we buried that Tuesday in October. I drove up from the hotel that morning with my husband Daniel. Daniel's also Navy, a lieutenant commander, intelligence side. We've been married 3 years. He met Grandma exactly twice, and she liked him better than she liked me, which I told her was rude and she told me was honest. Daniel knew the family by reputation more than experience. I'd warned him. "They're gonna be weird," I said in the car. "My dad's gonna pretend everything's fine. Travis is gonna make at least one comment about my weight or my job. Brenda's gonna talk about Jesus. Just nod." Daniel laughed. "Eleanor, I work in intel. I can survive your family." I didn't laugh back. I just kept driving. The funeral home was a low brick building off Park Avenue, the kind of place that smelled like carnations and old carpet. I parked in the back lot. I sat there for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. Daniel waited. He's good at that. Waiting. "You okay?" he asked. "I will be," I said. "Let's go." I'd worn the dress whites because she'd asked me to. 3 months before she died, when the hospice nurse was setting up the bed in her living room, Grandma had grabbed my wrist with those shaking hands and said, "Wear the white one. Make them look at you. Make them remember whose granddaughter you are." So I wore it. Service cap under my arm, ribbons in 2 neat rows, the gold trident over my left breast pocket because they'd let me keep wearing it after the transfer. I felt like a fool walking up the path. I felt like a soldier going to war. Travis was already at the door. He'd put on weight since I'd seen him at Christmas, maybe 20 pounds, all of it in his face and his belly. He was wearing a black suit that didn't fit him right anymore, and a tie with little fishing lures on it because of course he did. His wife, Crystal, was next to him, blonde and too tan for October, scrolling on her phone. He saw me coming and he smirked. That was the first thing. Before he said a word, before I was even close enough to hear him, he smirked at my uniform. "There she is," he said, loud enough that everyone in the foyer turned. The useless soldier finally came. Crystal laughed. A few of Dad's church friends in the lobby looked away, embarrassed. I didn't break stride. I walked right up to him. "Hi, Travis. Nice costume. It's a uniform." That's what I said. Daniel's hand touched the small of my back, a warning, or maybe just a presence. I didn't turn to look at him. I kept my eyes on my brother. "I'm here for Grandma," I said. "Try to remember that." "Oh, I remember," he said. "Try to remember that." "Oh, I remember," he said. "I remember she paid your tuition while I worked 3 jobs." That was a lie. He'd worked 1 job at a sporting goods store and he'd quit it twice. Grandma had paid for his community college too until he dropped out. But I didn't say that. I walked past him into the chapel. My father was already in the front pew. He looked older than I remembered. His hair had gone fully white. Brenda was beside him in a dress that was too short for a funeral, holding a tissue she hadn't used. Her 2 sons, my stepbrothers, were grown men now, both standing by the casket talking to each other like they were at a barbecue. I walked up to the casket. I touched the wood. Grandma was inside, in the navy blue dress with the silk rose hat. They'd done her hair the way she liked it, set tight, no nonsense. "I'm here," I whispered. "I wore it, like you said." I stood there for a long time. Long enough that people started to whisper. I didn't care. Let them. When I finally turned around, Travis was watching me from across the room with that same smirk. He raised his glass of water to me mockingly. My father saw him do it. He didn't say anything. He never did. The service was short. The priest hadn't really known her. He read the standard prayers, talked about resurrection, mentioned her name 3 times and pronounced it wrong twice. Brenda cried theatrically during a hymn she didn't know the words to. My father stared at his hands. When it was over, I helped carry the casket. Daniel was on the other side. 2 of the funeral home's pallbearers, a cousin I hadn't seen in 15 years, and Travis, who'd insisted on being part of it even though he'd called Grandma the old bat at the last Thanksgiving I'd attended. We loaded her into the hearse. People started walking to their cars to drive to the cemetery. That's when I saw it. I was standing by the back of the hearse, watching them close the door, and I happened to glance toward the parking lot. Travis was already there near his truck, a big black F-250 with custom rims that he definitely couldn't afford. He was talking to a man I didn't recognize. Older guy, maybe 60, wearing a charcoal suit, no overcoat even though it was 40 degrees. They were standing close. Travis handed him something, a manila envelope, slim, the kind that holds maybe 10 or 20 sheets of paper. The man slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket. They shook hands. The man got into a silver sedan and pulled out of the lot. It took maybe 8 seconds. Daniel was next to me. I touched his arm. "Did you see that?" "See what?" "That guy. The car. The envelope." He looked at me. There's a lot of people here. The silver sedan, just pulling out." He squinted at the lot. I didn't catch it. Why? I didn't answer. I was already thinking. The plates on the car had been a rental sticker. I'd seen the barcode on the back bumper. The man had been wearing dress shoes, but they had that specific stiffness you get from polishing them once and never breaking them in, the way someone wears them when they don't usually wear suits. And Travis. Travis had been nervous. Travis is never nervous. Travis is always performing. Something was wrong. "We have to go," I said. "To the cemetery, yeah, in a minute." "No. After the burial. We have to go somewhere else. Trust me." Daniel didn't ask. That's one of the reasons I married him. The graveside service was even shorter than the chapel. The wind had picked up cold off the lake. The priest rushed through it. Travis stood next to my father, his hand on Dad's shoulder, playing the dutiful son. Brenda kept looking at her watch. When the casket was lowered, I tossed in a handful of dirt the way Grandma had once told me they did in the old country. My father didn't even know that tradition. Then I walked back to the car, and I told Daniel where we were going. Grandma had owned a small house in Auburn, about 15 minutes south of the funeral home. She lived there for 53 years. Bought it with my grandfather in 1971. Grandfather had passed in 2009. The house was hers, and now, per the will I'd seen 6 months ago, it was supposed to be mine. Travis had thrown a fit about that when he found out. He'd thought he was getting the house. He'd thought wrong. I had a key. She'd given me a copy when I got commissioned. In case you ever need to come home, she'd said. I needed to come home, she'd said. I needed to come home. We pulled up to the house at 3 in the afternoon. The leaves on the maple in the front yard had turned that deep red she'd always loved. The porch light was on, the way she'd always left it. Inside, the house smelled like her. Lemon pledge and old books and a little bit of the lavender sachets she kept in the linen closet. I almost broke down right there. I didn't. I had time for that later. What are we looking for? Daniel asked. I don't know yet. Grandpa had built a workshop in the basement. It had been his sanctuary, and after he died, it had become hers. She'd taken up woodworking in her 70s, of all things. Made me a little wooden box for my dog tags. She kept her important papers down there too, in a fireproof file cabinet she'd bought at an estate sale. I went down first. Daniel followed. The light at the bottom of the stairs was on. I stopped. Daniel stopped behind me. Did she leave that on? He asked, quiet. No. Hospice came every day for the last 2 weeks. They wouldn't have. And she hadn't been down here in months. I didn't have my service weapon. I'd flown commercial, and even with my credentials, I hadn't bothered with the paperwork for a single funeral trip. Stupid. I made a mental note never to do that again. We went down anyway. Daniel had his phone in his hand, ready to dial. The workshop was empty. But someone had been there. The drawers of Grandpa's old tool chest were half open. A wire cutter sat on the workbench that hadn't been there last summer. I was sure of it, because she'd let me reorganize her tools, and I knew where every single thing went. The file cabinet was unlocked. The bottom drawer was pulled out 3 inches. I crouched down and looked at the lock. It hadn't been forced. Someone had a key, or they'd known the combination, because the cabinet had both. Grandma kept her copies of important documents in that bottom drawer: birth certificates, the deed, her will, a folder of old letters from Grandpa from when he was in Korea. I started going through it. The deed was still there. The will was still there. The Korea letters were still there. But there was a manila envelope at the back of the drawer that I'd never seen before. It was thick. It was labeled in Grandma's careful handwriting, FOA ELEANOR. If something happens. My hands shook. I pulled it out. Inside were 32 pages. The first thing was a letter. 2 pages, handwritten, her shaky cursive. Eleanor, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you found the envelope, which means you noticed something was wrong. I knew you would. You're the only one in this family who notices things. Your brother has been stealing from me for 3 years. It started small. $500 here, $1,000 there. He took out 2 credit cards in my name without telling me. He talked me into signing a power of attorney last Christmas when I was on the morphine, and he's been using it to move money out of my accounts. I caught him in March when the bank called about a wire transfer to an account in the Cayman Islands. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd come home and ruin your career chasing him. I want you to chase him now, but I want you to do it the right way. The Navy way. Your way. Everything you need is in this envelope. Bank statements. Copies of the credit card applications, with his handwriting. The power of attorney he had me sign. Photos I took on my phone of the documents he was hiding in his truck when he stayed here in April. There's a flash drive too, in the small box on the workbench. I had my friend Margie's grandson copy everything from my computer onto it. He's not just stealing, he's involved in something bigger. I overheard him on the phone twice when he thought I was asleep. He's been laundering money through that fake fishing charter business in Florida. The one he said was his investment. There are people involved I don't know the names of, but he's scared of them. I heard him crying once. Eleanor, my sweet girl, I want you to do what's right. Not what's easy. Not what's kind. What's right. Your grandfather and I didn't raise a coward, and we didn't raise his sister to be one either. I love you more than I have words for. Grandma P.S. The man you'll probably see him with is not his friend. He's not on his side. Be careful. I read it twice. Daniel read it over my shoulder. I didn't cry. I felt something colder than crying. I checked the workbench. The little wooden box was there. The flash drive was inside. I went through the rest of the envelope. The bank statement showed almost $140,000 moved out of her accounts over 31 months, in transactions ranging from $200 to $9,900, just under the federal reporting threshold. He'd been smart enough to know about that. The credit cards had a combined limit of $50,000, almost all of it maxed out. The power of attorney was dated December 23rd of the prior year, 2 days before Christmas. She'd been on hospice-level pain management by then. It wouldn't have held up in any court that looked at it for 10 seconds, but he'd been using it anyway. The photos on the phone, which she'd printed out and stapled to a typed inventory, showed documents in his truck. Bills of lading from a company in Tampa. Invoices for boat fuel in quantities no charter business would actually need. Account numbers I didn't recognize. I sat on the cold concrete floor of my grandmother's basement and I looked at my husband. Daniel, I said. Who do you know at the bureau? He blinked. Boston field office. A few people. Why? Because this isn't just elder fraud. Look at this. I held up one of the invoices. These quantities. He's not running a charter. He's moving something. And that guy at the funeral, the one with the envelope, I think Travis is paying someone off. Or being paid. I don't know which yet. Daniel sat down next to me. He read through the documents slowly. He's careful. He doesn't jump. This is FBI territory, he said. Financial Crimes Division. Maybe organized crime, depending on what's in Tampa. And if your grandmother was actually competent when he had her sign that power of attorney, this is also a state criminal matter. Elder abuse. Identity theft. I want him in cuffs, I said. Today. Yes. Daniel looked at me for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone. Give me the documents. Let me read every page first. If this is real, I'll make the call. But Eleanor, if we do this today, at the reception in front of your father, you understand what that means. I understand. There's no taking it back. He stole from her. While she was dying. Daniel nodded. He went upstairs to the kitchen with the envelope. I heard him on the phone for almost 40 minutes. I sat in the basement and looked at the wire cutter on the workbench and thought about how Travis had been there. In her house. Looking for this exact envelope. He must have known she'd been getting suspicious. He must have come back yesterday or the day before to find it. He'd missed it. Maybe he didn't know about the false back of the bottom drawer, the little gap behind it where she'd actually hidden it. I'd only found it because the drawer was pulled out at an odd angle and I'd seen the seam. Grandma had outsmarted him, even from the grave. Daniel came down. His face was different now. They're sending a team to the reception. 2 agents, plainclothes. They want to talk to him in a controlled environment. They're also coordinating with state police because of the elder abuse charges. The Tampa stuff is going to take a few weeks to develop, but they have enough on the financial crimes to take him into custody today. How long? 40 minutes. I stood up. My uniform was dusty from the basement floor. I brushed it off. Let's go say goodbye to my grandmother properly, I said. The reception was at Brenda's church, a big modern Baptist building on the west side of town with a fellowship hall that smelled like coffee and casseroles. About 60 people had come. Most of them were Brenda's friends or my father's old co-workers from the dealership where he'd sold cars for 30 years. A handful were Grandma's friends from the senior center. Margie was there. She caught my eye across the room and nodded. She knew. Of course she knew. She'd helped Grandma copy the files. Travis was holding court near the food table, telling some story about Grandma to a group of Dad's church friends. He was eating a meatball. I walked up to him. "Travis, can we talk?" He looked at me. He looked at the room. He smiled. "What, you finally gonna apologize for embarrassing the family? For what?" "That uniform. At a funeral. Grandma would have hated it. Grandma asked me to wear it." "Sure she did." I looked at him for a long moment. He had a piece of marinara at the corner of his mouth. "You went to her house," I said quietly. His smile faltered. Just for a half second. He covered it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You went to her house. You went to her file cabinet. You were looking for the envelope. You're losing it, Eleanor. You always were the dramatic one. You stole $140,000 from her, Travis." His face changed, the color drained out of it. He glanced around the room, then back at me, and now there was something ugly in his eyes that I'd seen before. The look he used to get when we were kids, and he'd been caught lying. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I have the bank statements. I have the credit card applications. I have the power of attorney you made her sign on morphine. I have the wire transfer records. I have photos of what you were hauling in your truck." "You went through her stuff?" "She left it for me, Travis. She left it for me, Travis. She knew." He took a step toward me. He was bigger than me. He'd always been bigger than me, but I'd been hit by men twice his size in hand-to-hand training, and I'd put them on the floor. He saw something in my face that made him stop. "You don't have shit," he said. But his voice was thin. "In about 20 minutes, 2 FBI agents are going to walk through that door, and then we'll see what I have." He went white. I will remember that color for the rest of my life. A grown man, my brother, watching his entire life disappear in the space of one sentence and going the color of cold ash. He bolted. He pushed past me, knocked into a folding chair, and made for the door. I let him go. Daniel was watching from across the room. He shook his head slightly. The agents had the parking lot covered. The state police had a unit at the end of the block. I knew because Daniel had told me on the drive over. Travis got 18 feet from his truck before the first agent intercepted him. The second agent came up on his left. A trooper rolled up from the street. It happened fast and quiet, the way these things actually happen, not the way they happen on TV. No shouting. Just 3 men closing in, and my brother on his knees on the asphalt with his hands on his head. Most of the reception didn't even know it was happening. Brenda was telling someone about her diet. My father saw it. He'd been near the window. He came over to me. His face was gray. "Eleanor, what did you do?" "I did what she asked me to do." "He's your brother. He stole from your mother, Dad, for 3 years, while she was dying. He took out credit cards in her name. He moved her money to the Caymans. He used her, Dad. You don't know that." "I do know that. And in about an hour, you're going to know it too, because the FBI is going to ask you questions about your son, and you're going to have to decide what kind of man you want to be." He stared at me. There was so much I wanted to say to him. About all the swim meets he hadn't come to, about my commissioning, about Christmas of 2014 when he'd told me, drunk, that he wished I'd been the boy because Travis was a disappointment, about every single time he'd chosen his comfort over his children. I didn't say any of it. He wasn't worth it. I walked away from him out of the fellowship hall into the parking lot. The October sun was lower now, golden on the maples. Daniel was waiting by our rental car. One of the agents came over. A woman, mid-40s, kind eyes, professional voice. "Lieutenant Brannigan. I'm Special Agent Riordan, Boston Field Office. Thank you for what you brought us today. We've been looking at the Tampa operation for 14 months. Your brother's name had come up twice. We didn't have enough to move. Today we do." "What's going to happen to him?" "He's going to be arraigned tomorrow in federal court. The financial crimes alone are looking at a 15-year ceiling. If the Tampa investigation links him to what we think it links him to, that ceiling goes considerably higher. The elder abuse charges will be handled by the state separately. He's not going to be a free man for a long time, Lieutenant." I nodded. I didn't feel anything I could name. Your grandmother was a very brave woman, she said. What she did, gathering this evidence at her age, sick as she was, that took courage. Yes, I said. It did. Agent Reardon touched my arm once, briefly, and walked back to her partner. Daniel came over. He put his arm around me. We stood in the parking lot of a church in Worcester, Massachusetts, and watched the leaves move in the wind. You okay? He asked. I will be. You did right by her. I know. We stood there for a while longer. Inside the fellowship hall, my father was probably calling a lawyer. Brenda was probably crying for the camera that wasn't there. Crystal had probably already deleted Travis from her social media. I thought about Grandma in her navy blue dress and her silk rose hat, lying under the soft red dirt of a Catholic cemetery a few miles away. I thought about the morning she'd pinned my ensign bars on me with her trembling hands. I thought about her voice on the phone 3 weeks before she died, when she told me, "Eleanor, I'm not afraid. I just want you to be the kind of person who doesn't look away." I hadn't looked away. A couple of weeks later, I got the box of her things that the lawyer had set aside for me. The little wooden box she'd made me, with my dog tags inside, was on top. Underneath it was the silk rose from her hat. She'd taken it off the hat before they buried her, I guess. Or someone had. Margie, probably. I put the rose in a small frame on my desk at the NCIS office in Norfolk. People ask about it sometimes. I tell them it belonged to the bravest woman I ever knew. I don't tell them the rest. The rest is between her and me. But I'll tell you one more thing. About 6 months after Travis was sentenced, after the Tampa indictments came down, after my father stopped returning my calls, I got a letter forwarded to me from Grandma's old address. It was from Margie. She'd been cleaning out the last of Grandma's things from the senior center, and she'd found a journal. The last entry, dated 4 days before she died, was one sentence. Eleanor will know what to do. She always did. I keep that letter in the wooden box with my dog tags. Some people, when they go, they leave you furniture or money or a house. My grandmother left me a mission, and she left me the woman she'd raised me to be, sitting in a dress white uniform on a basement floor in Auburn, Massachusetts. Finally understood by the only person whose opinion ever mattered. Useless soldier. That's what he called me. She knew better. So did I. I think about that October afternoon more often than I'd like to admit. Not the moment Travis went down on the asphalt with his hands on his head. Not even the moment Agent Reardon thanked me for what I'd brought her. I think about the 8 seconds in the parking lot when I saw my brother hand a manila envelope to a stranger, and Daniel didn't see it, and nobody else saw it, and I had a choice to make about whether I trusted my own eyes. That's the thing nobody tells you about doing the right thing. It almost never feels like a movie. It feels like standing in a cold parking lot wondering if you're crazy. What I've come to understand, sitting at my desk in Norfolk with that silk rose in its little frame, is that every single thing that happened that day was the harvest of seeds planted years before. Travis didn't wake up a thief at 34. He woke up a thief because for 30 years no one in our family ever told him no. My father didn't fail to come to the FBI's defense of his mother because he was a bad man in a single moment. He failed her because he had spent 40 years choosing comfort over courage, one small choice at a time. And Grandma, my grandma, didn't outsmart a con artist on her deathbed by accident. She did it because she had spent 83 years being the kind of woman who paid attention, the kind of woman who noticed things. The kind of woman who taught her granddaughter to do the same. Every life, I think, is just the sum of what you practiced. Travis practiced taking what wasn't his. He got good at it. Grandma practiced watching, listening, writing things down, asking the quiet questions. She got good at that too. The day she died, those two skill sets met each other across a basement file cabinet, and there was never any contest. What I've taken from her, more than the dog tags box or the silk rose, is this. Honesty is not a feeling. It's a muscle. You build it by using it on small things, on the days when nothing is at stake, so that when the day finally comes and everything is at stake, you don't have to think about which way to move. Your body already knows. Intelligence isn't the same as being clever. Travis was clever. He found the loopholes. He timed the transfers. He knew about the $9,900 threshold. Grandma was intelligent. She knew what mattered. She knew what to write down. She knew which granddaughter to leave the envelope to. And courage, real courage, is almost never loud. It's an 83-year-old woman with shaking hands, sitting at her kitchen table with a friend named Margie, copying documents onto a flash drive while her son thinks she's asleep upstairs. It's a 31-year-old woman in a dress-white uniform deciding in 8 seconds to trust what she saw. I am not a useless soldier. I never was. But I wasn't fully made yet either. She finished me that day. She finished me by trusting me with the truth and trusting me to know what to do with it. That, I think, is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me, and the one I hope someday I'm strong enough to pass along to someone else.